Hey everybody, I'm Alan. I'm alcoholic. Yeah, I love Lara. She, her, I guess it's okay to talk about her ex-husband was my very first sponsor. That's how I ended up painting the house. He told me that I had to. As part of staying sober. No. My sobriety date is April 28th of 2020. My home group is Stay Gold. We meet on Saturday nights at the Rock of Ages Church at 6:30 on Greenwood Avenue. We'd love for you guys to come out and check us out. It's a great meeting. Actually, it's kind of in conflict with this one, but if you're ever come check us out. Do have a sponsor, like Carl said, and he does have a sponsor. My sponsor is Mike M. Lives in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Not sure how to start. The first time I drank, I was 12 years old, and it's funny how I was thinking about this because obviously when you know you're going to talk, you kind of start to reflect on how things started. And I was living in Maple Valley, and we stole me and a couple of buddies of mine stole some MD 2020. And I remember the great thing was those bottles would fit because the way they were shaped, it would fit in the front of your pants, and then you could put your shirt over them. And we ended up out in the woods behind our house on the trail where we hung out a lot when I was a kid. And and I remember exactly how it made me feel. And I knew that it was something that I wanted to do again. And I don't know when it became continuous. I know that even early on, I started having a lot of, alcohol started causing a lot of problems in my life. My mom was, when I was 14, my mom was diagnosed with leukemia, and she passed when I was 16. So that 2 years, she was in the hospital all the time. And my dad was never around. He was either at the hospital or he was out drinking. And, so I didn't have any supervision. And so I was drawn to this lifestyle of hanging out with these kids. We started doing breaking and entering. We were robbing people's houses and to get money for drugs and alcohol. And I was 14, 15 years old. My mom died when I was 16, and my dad wouldn't let me live at the house anymore, so I joined the military. And I was in for almost 3 years, and they asked me to leave. I just started alcohol again. I started getting in a lot of trouble. I didn't realize at the time. I look back now and I realized that even then I had alcoholism. The way I drank. Once I started to drink, I obviously lost control of how much I was going to drink, and then if I stopped, I could never stay stopped. And so, right before I got discharged, I was in a blackout. I was stationed in Germany, and I was in a blackout, and they charged me with AWOL at first, and then it changed it to I forget what the charge was, but they ended up giving me an honorable discharge. And I was only 20. I was 22 at the time, right? So it was like you would think that you would make this decision like, this is not working out. I need to do something else, right? But that just wasn't the case. I look back now again and realize, I had alcoholism. It makes complete sense the way I drank and the way I used drugs. But, I didn't see it then. And it would be a long time before I finally got sober. My first treatment center was actually when I was in the military. They forced me to go to an outpatient treatment center. My first Alcoholics Anonymous meeting ever was in Germany. It was on a military base, but it was in 1981. Yeah, 1981. So my sobriety date is 2020. So, I got out of the military. I was married. She divorced me. And what happened was, is my life, I started doing this thing where I started moving around a lot. I would do that thing where I would be living in, I was living in New Mexico when I got out of the military. And I kind of burned my life to the ground there. So I figured I'll move back to Washington. So I moved back here. And I was here from 82 to, I want to say 85 when I moved to California. And I moved to California because we had stolen a bunch of marijuana from somebody and they were looking for us. So it just seemed like a good idea to get out of town. So we moved to Los Angeles, me and my brother. And that was one of the first times I really kind of attempted sobriety. We moved down there and I was there for the third night we were down there, we got arrested, we got pulled over. The guy who was driving got a DWI and I got into an altercation with the police because I was drunk and they beat the shit out of me and charged me with disorderly conduct and drunk in public. And so I remember waking up in the jail cell and telling myself, man, I can't keep doing this, man. I got to stop. This has got to stop. So, I didn't think about going to Alcoholics Anonymous, but and my brother, we made a pact. We were just going to stop drinking, right? And we did, and it lasted for almost a year. And then we went to San Diego to play golf, and we threw our clubs in the car and drove down to San Diego. We got down there, and how that happens. It's like all of a sudden it just seemed like a good idea. It's like, wow, it's like we're going to play golf tomorrow. It's a beautiful day. We're right by the beach. Let's have a beer, And we started drinking that night and never made it to the golf course. Met some girls that had some cocaine and actually didn't even sleep the whole weekend. We drove back to Los Angeles without sleeping for 2 days. So, it was just this constant, because I was in LA for 3 years. I got into a bunch of legal trouble. So I decided it might be a good idea to move to Las Vegas. And then a few years later, I moved to Florida because I wanted to stop doing cocaine. So, that's how it works, right? Well, that's a great idea. Move to the cocaine capital of the world, right? But I got in some serious legal trouble in Las Vegas. I was in a drunken stupor. We've been smoking crack. Decided to try to get some extra money. Went out and committed a robbery and ended up. At one point, I was looking at 4 to 40 years in the state penitentiary, and they dropped 2 of the other charges, and I was looking at 1 to 15. And that was in 1989. And no, sorry, it was 87. It was 1987. God, my memory is, I'm 62 now, and I saw my girlfriend the other day. I'm like, God, I think I might have like early onset Alzheimer's, and she's like, I don't know how to tell you this, but it's not that early. Thank you for that.
She's a kid.
Appreciate that. But so I got out of jail in Vegas. They gave me probation. And when I went in front of the judge, they told me, we're going to sentence you to 6 years in prison. We're suspending all that and giving you 5 years probation. And the terms of this probation are you have to complete a drug and alcohol treatment program, stay clean and sober for 5 years, and don't commit any more crimes. And at that point, I had been incarcerated for almost 11 months. So I hadn't had any drinks or any drug in my system at all. And I remember when the judge told me that, I didn't cry in court because you didn't cry in jail. You don't cry in jail. It's just not something you do. So I waited until I got back to my cell, broke down because it was like I felt like I had, dodged a huge bullet. And I was, convinced that this was it. And I was going to get out and I was going to get my stuff straight. And I was going to, and this was going to be it. And it takes a while to get out process. And about 2 o'clock in the morning, they finally called my name over the loudspeaker. Donnelly, wrap it up. And I got all my stuff. They gave me all my possessions and my clothes and stuff. I changed clothes. I walked across the street. I was in the Clark County Detention Center in downtown Las Vegas, and I walked across the street into a casino, bought a pack of cigarettes, and started drinking, knowing that if I got caught, I was going to go to prison for 6 years. You know, it didn't matter. You know, the book tells us, if we have that mind of the alcoholic, right, there'll be that time that comes where we just won't have a defense, right? And for me, it was like, when I think about it now, there was no thought to it at all. I didn't think about it. I didn't think about what might happen. I just drank, and I came to Seattle, and I mean, thank God I had a great probation officer. He gave me a couple of chances, because he could have violated me a few different times, but he gave me an opportunity. So in 1991, when I was homeless, I was living in Pioneer Square, basically sleeping up around the courthouse. We'd sleep on the vents because they blew warm air. I finally found. I don't know. I don't even know if you would call it a willingness. I was just so beat up that so done, and that's when I met Lara's husband, Kenny. I was at a meeting. I went to a meeting, and a friend of mine and the reason I went is because sometimes he would give me money, and sometimes he would let me sleep on his floor, and I was hoping he would be there. And I remember getting to the meeting. I had to walk because I obviously didn't have a car. It was raining in Seattle, and I got to the meeting, and Jeffrey, who let me used to sleep on his floor, was chairing the meeting, and he called on me, and I had one of those moments where I just broke down. I just started to sob, and Kenny approached me after the meeting and said, told me, hey, I can help you if you're willing. I have a solution. If you want, we can start meeting. We'll read the book, and I got sober in January 7th, 1992. That time, and so he put up with me for over a year. Because I just couldn't stay sober, but he never gave up on me. Right? He never said, I can't be your sponsor anymore. He never gave. I would call him at all night hours of the night, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, and I finally got into the treatment center at the VA hospital, and when I got out, I moved into a triune house, which is a sober living, and I did everything that Kenny told me to do. I got a service position. I got a home group, and I got a service position at that home group. We started reading the book, once a week. I went through the steps. I wrote inventory, and I made amends, and my life changed completely. I found sobriety. I mean, I found the gift of sobriety. And like happens to some of us, and I hear this a lot, my life got really big really fast, right? I mean, I started to acquire things like we do when we're in Alcoholics Anonymous, when we're sober. Like I got a great job, and I met a woman, and we got married, and we had a baby, and we were going to buy a house, and I started a painting business, and somewhere along the line, and I know what happened now. I look back, it's because when you stop coming to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings all the time, or when you stop meeting with your sponsor all the time, or you stop meeting with your sponsee all the time, you stop hearing those things like, all I have is a daily reprieve, right? This is a way of life, right? This is something that I have to do for the rest of my life. And I stopped hearing that, right? And somewhere around 10 years, because again, timeline's really hazy, I drank again. Bill talks about it, and Bill's story, he says, as alcoholics, if we fail to enlarge and perfect our spiritual life, we're not going to be able to meet those low spots in life that come up. And my brother committed suicide, and my wife left me for another man, right? And I didn't survive those low spots. I went back out again. All of this, a drink seemed like a good idea, and then I remember thinking after some really bad relapses, I'm thinking, I've done this before. I know what to do. I know how to do this thing. I'm going to come right back into Alcoholics Anonymous, and that was in 2000 and somewhere after 9/11, around 2011, 2012, or sorry, 2001 or 2002. And like I said, my sobriety date's 2020. So I've spent the last year, in and out and put together 30 days here, and then after a while, I just kind of stopped trying. I stopped drinking altogether, but I started using pain medication to manage my alcoholism, because I could take pain medication and still function and go to work, and, at least I thought I could still function. I thought I was functioning, and like, again, when we look back in hindsight, it's like, yeah, no, I wasn't functioning, My last big relapse was, I didn't even drink. It was a fentanyl-laced heroin overdose, and I my daughter came home and found them load me in an ambulance. And she asked the paramedics, she's like, what's going on? And they said, well, we'll let your dad tell you, And I had to tell her, I'm sorry, honey, I overdosed. And she didn't even have a clue that I was using. The toughest part about it was that, they took me in the ambulance, they took me to the emergency room, and they hooked me up to a monitor, and they Narcan me, but because the stuff was so strong, I stopped breathing 3 different times in the emergency room with her sitting there watching that. Right? And this was a little girl when she was born. I remember telling her, I'm never going to let you down. I love this little person so much. But, what I've learned from that is that it doesn't matter how much I love my daughter, I can't stay clean and sober because of her. Right? That was a little over 3 years ago. It was during COVID, and I had a friend that came down. I'm a painter, and he came down to help me paint an apartment building in San Diego. And he was clean and sober, and he was doing Zoom meetings. And he's from here. He's from Seattle, and he didn't try to force it on me, but he just said, "Hey, I'm going to do a Zoom meeting tonight. But if you want to come, And I said, "Yeah, absolutely, man. I'll come." And so we sat in the Airbnb that we're at, and turns out that it's the meeting now that it's my home group now. It's Stay Gold, and it was being chaired by the man who's my sponsor today, right? And he something happened that I truly believe that we just get struck sober, right? I just because I just heard something. There was just something about the way he talked, and I remember after the meeting, I asked Jason. I said, "Who is this guy?" And he said, "Oh, this is Mike M from Cedar Rapids. He used to manage a halfway house that I lived in." And I said, "You think he would sponsor me?" And he's like, "Yeah, I know he would. That's what they do." He says, So I called Mike. Jason gave me his number, and I called Mike and told him who I was. And he asked me a few questions, and he said, "All right, let's pick a day." And I think it was 2 or 3 days later, and we started reading the book. And we would read the book, and then after we finished reading, he'd say, "All right, let's pick another day." And we wouldn't even go a week. We would go maybe 2 or 3 days, and we would start to read the book. And we read the book. And we never even met in person. We did it over the phone, and we didn't Zoom. He's an old farmer from from Iowa. I don't even know if he knows how to use Zoom or if he knows how to use FaceTime. But we read the book, and when it came time to write, I finished writing inventory, and I bought a plane ticket, and I flew out to Cedar Rapids, Iowa, to read my inventory to him. And that was the first time we'd ever met in person. It was when he came to my hotel room to listen to my fifth step, and I don't know why I'm so emotional tonight. So after we did the fifth, I read my inventory, and he gave me directions for 6 and 7. I got did my quiet for an hour, and then he said, when you're done, if you want, I'll come back and pick you up, and we'll go out to the farm, and we're going to do a fish fry, and we do a little fishing, and you can hang out and meet my family. And I said, absolutely. So he came back after I was done, and we went out to the farm, and I was overwhelmed with this feeling like I was in the right place, doing the right thing. I felt like because for the longest time I felt like maybe I had kind of missed, like I'd had my shot at this deal, right? Because I'd already been sober for 10 years, and I thought maybe that was my shot at it, and I didn't have another shot at it. And so when I had that experience, I was just overwhelmed with, like, I'm going to be okay. I'm in the right place. I'm doing the right thing with the right kind of people. And I was talking to his wife, and mind you, I've never even met any of his family until that night. And we were sitting in the kitchen. We finished eating. We were just talking, and then they were asking me about people I knew in Washington. And I mentioned some friends, Rico and Yvonne. And she said, "How do you know Rico and Yvonne?" And I said, "Well, Rico was in my wedding, and he's the godfather to my little girl." And she's like, "Oh my God." She's like, "Hold on a second." She gets up and she gets her phone and she comes over and she pulls up this picture. And it's a picture of Rico and Yvonne holding my daughter. And I'm like, what? And it turns out that she was Yvonne's grand sponsor. So that's how that happened. But I was like, how do you have a picture of my daughter and my best friends? And I've never met you. I'm in Iowa. I'm 3,000 miles from home. How does this happen? And when I left the house and I was driving back to the hotel, I was just overwhelmed with this feeling of like I had finally found my way back again, and I was going to be okay no matter what. And that turned out to be the case. I just celebrated 3 years of sobriety last month. I sponsor a couple guys. Carl's one of my guys. I got a couple other guys. I talked about how Bill, says that if we fail to enlarge and perfect our spiritual life, we can't survive those low spots. Well, on Tuesday, my girlfriend broke up with me, right? And I'm sure everybody's all been through it. Heartbreak is probably one of the worst things, but because I've been like immersed in this program, and I have a home group, and I have a service position, and I have a sponsor, and I have a group of friends and people that I'm accountable to, I'm walking through this, right? And I called my sponsor right away and talked to him about it, and we're in the same home group. So I'm like, well, I'm going to have to find a new home group. And he said, no, I don't think you should. He said, I think you should go to the meeting with your head held high, with some integrity, and be a service to the meeting. And that wasn't what I wanted to hear. I wanted him to say, go to a different meeting. You don't want to see her. But, and my daughter, that was a relationship that I thought I had fractured, maybe that I could never fix. And, that's not the case. We have this beautiful relationship today, but she's been checking on me every day. She was the first one I called because my sponsor lives in Iowa, and it happened pretty late, and I knew he would be in bed, so I didn't call him till the next day, but I reached out to her, and she called me right away. And, she's had her heart broken, so she could empathize, but it's just been so sweet. She's like text me every day, and she sent me a care package with some gummy bears and some you know, just some stuff that I really like, you know, that she knows that I really love, and you know, and offered to like DoorDash me, you know, some I'll DoorDash you some food because I know you probably don't feel like cooking, you know, and my friends are all reaching out and, you know, messaging me and, you know, dude, we love you, man, and we, you know, if you need anything, you know, so because when it first happened, I thought I'm supposed to speak on Saturday. I don't want to do that. I'm going to call Lara and tell her I'm heartbroken.
I wouldn't have gone over.
Yeah, so I'm just super grateful for this program, this way of life, you know, and that's one of the things I've learned after all the years of coming in and out, and I try to really stress this with my sponsees is that this is a way of life. This is something we have to do every day, right? And I've learned that the hard way, right? If I'm not treating my disease on a daily basis, you know, at some point, you know, no matter how great things are going, you know, a drink's going to seem like a good idea, you know, and I can tell you that even though I'm just coming and doing this helps, you know, and I'm chairing a meeting tonight. When I'm done here, I'm going to chair another meeting. So it's like God puts all of these things in my life so I can stay busy. So I'm not, you know, stuck in my head on that hamster wheel, having that conversation with her that, oh, I should have said this or I should have done that. You know, so I'm glad that well, I mean, there's no way I could have got out of coming. I could imagine me calling my sponsor, hey, Mike, I'm really in a bad place. I don't think I can go talk tonight. That wouldn't have flown at all. So,
Is there more to the story?
There's more to the story. So when I did my fifth step and and when I flew back, I flew into Des Moines and had to drive to Cedar Rapids. When I drove back from Cedar Rapids to Des Moines, it started raining, and you know, we know rain. We're from Washington. We know rain, right? It started raining so hard. I've never seen it rain like that. I mean, I was on the freeway and I had to slow down to like 25, 30 miles an hour because I could not see. And it was just this torrential downpour. And I remember, you know, I made it okay. Obviously, I got to the airport and I flew back and you know, I called Mike that week, you know, for our regular meeting. And I told him, I'm like, dude, I've never seen it rain like that. And I mean, that's like the hardest rain I've ever seen. And he's like, oh yeah, that was just God washing away that huge bag of crap he left in the hotel back there. Yeah, I guess I could probably wrap it up. You know, thank you, Lara, for asking me to come speak. Anytime anybody asks me to do something like this, it is an honor. I'm just super grateful for the life that I have today, or for the way of life that I have today. You know, I got a really great job and surrounded by great people, and I'm back on the market again. So, thanks, you guys.
I am too.